Good afternoon, and welcome to the Tapscott-Lopes Lecture in Business and Society. My name is Dr. Byron Liu, and I'm the Director of the Trent School of Business. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize that Trent University is located on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. We are grateful to the Mississauga for their guidance, advice, and involvement with Trent. May we honor the teachings they share. I'd like to invite Julie Davis, Vice President, External Relations and Advancement, to share a few opening remarks on behalf of Trent University.
Thank you, Byron. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of everyone here at Trent, thank you for joining us for the 2021 Tapscott-Lopes Business and Society Lecture. It's a beautiful day here in Peterborough, and while I wish we were all assembled in person, I'm glad that we're able to connect in Zoom during this time of extended disconnection. We're joined today by students, faculty, alumni, and community members, and I'd like to specifically acknowledge that the Chair of the Durham Region, John Henry, is here, the Chair of the Trent Board of Governors and many current and former governors, and 4 of our honorary degree recipients, James Obinski, Jean Augustine, Peter Raymont, and Katie Taylor, who is just finishing up as Trent's first inaugural CEO in business for the school. This lecture series was established by 2 of Trent's biggest champions, alumnus Chancellor Emeritus, Dr. Don Tapscott, and honorary alumni and board member emeritus, Ana Lopes. Don came to Trent in 1966 and began his term as Chancellor of the University in 2013, and he was the first alumnus to hold this distinguished role. During his time as Chancellor, he presided over Trent's 50th anniversary celebrations, the grand opening of the Student Centre, and the transformation of the Bata Library. Ana Lopes was first appointed to the Trent Board of Governors in 1998 and was given a lifetime appointment as Governor Emerita in 2005. In 2018, the Trent University Alumni Association recognized Anna for her years of dedication to the university and our students by awarding her honorary alumni status. Both Anna and Don have received countless accolades for their contributions to our country, including each being made a member of the Order of Canada. Their vision to establish the Tapscott-Lopes in 2003 has enabled us to bring changed leaders to discuss the social and ethical considerations that leaders grapple with as our world and business changes and evolves. Some speakers have included music guru James Griffin, who explored the incoming impacts of digital music and books, and Dr. David Suzuki, who discussed environmental ethics and impacts of our increasingly digital world. We're grateful for Don and Anna's vision, commitment, and generosity to the university. And if we're in person, I'm sure the applause would be thunderous, so please join me in thanking them from your homes across the country.
Thank you, Julie. And may I add my thanks and gratitude to Don and Anna as well. Opportunities for us to engage our community and learn from industry leaders, these are among the many ways the Trent School of Business is unique. The Tapscott-Lopes Lecture enables Trent to extend our vision by allowing us to hear from industry and technology leaders. The vision of the Trent School of Business is very much aligned with the Trent way of viewing and thinking about the world. And to quote Mark Carney, our vision includes our focus on risk and opportunity, not fear and greed. We teach our students to focus on global sustainability by starting locally, to think about the local community wherever they may end up. Our learning involves community engagement as well as Indigenous knowledge, and we embody the Trent values of social and environmental justice. We are like other business schools in that we provide our students with high caliber business education, but our focus is definitely on their roles in the future as leaders in a new world, in a changing world. We also note that students today, youth today, very much want to do something and make a difference. And we try to engage that and focus on the differences they can make through enterprise. And sustainability runs through our curriculum, whether it's in stakeholder engagement, whether for the current status of all involved, whether it's for the future and innovation, socially and environmentally responsible enterprise, all of those are part of our curriculum in sustainability. Before I invite our guests to the stage, a quick rundown of some housekeeping items. Chat. You may use this feature to interact with us today. Tell us where you're from and your thoughts. Q&A. Submit your questions for Michael McCain using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Closed captioning, Zoom offers auto closed captioning. Feel free to turn it on if you like. And please note, we are recording tonight's presentation and we will have it posted to the Trent website shortly. Now, let me introduce our speakers. So first, in addition to his extensive Trent credentials, Don Tapscott is a business innovator, a well-known author. His books and ideas have been advancing groundbreaking concepts, including the impact of a digital economy, the transformative impact of the internet, and most recently, the implementation of blockchain. He's been named the second most influential management thinker in the world by Thinkers 50. This afternoon, he is assuming the role of interviewer of our guest, Michael McCain, President and CEO of Maple Leaf Foods, one of Canada's flagship food companies, with sales of $3.3 billion, employing approximately 13,000 people in Canada and the United States. Mr. McCain has devoted his career to the food industry, starting at McCain Foods in the late 1970s, where he held a variety of roles, including President and Chief Executive Officer of McCain Foods USA. He joined Maple Leaf Foods in 1995. Since then, he has been instrumental in establishing Maple Leaf as a strong and sustainable values-based company with leading brands and market shares across its businesses and a bold vision for the future. Mr. McCain is director of McCain Capital, Maple Leaf Foods, and the Royal Bank of Canada. He is a member of the Richard Ivey School of Business Advisory Board, the Business Council of Canada, and the Center for Addiction and Mental Health Foundation. He is also the honorary chairman of the Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security. Born in Florenceville, New Brunswick, Mr. McCain attended Mount Allison University, received an honors business administration degree from the University of Western Ontario, now Western University. He holds honorary degrees from Brock University, Carleton University, and Guelph University. He is devoted to his 5 children and family and lives in Toronto. So Don, Michael, the virtual stage is yours.
Well, Byron, thanks very much. Michael, on behalf of both me and Anna, thanks so much for doing this. When we endowed this chair, one of the goals was to dig deeper than conventional discussions about corporate behavior that centered around ideas like corporate social responsibility and ESG, environments, social and governance. And these initiatives in most companies sound good, but often they're not really consequential. They appear as obligatory in annual reports and as PR initiatives, but they kind of lack substance. So we asked you to join us today because we know that you have a different perspective and a different experience. And what we'd like to do is, as the theme suggests, discuss really what is the purpose of a company as exemplified by you and Maple Leaf, and how it might operate differently in this increasingly smaller and more fragile world. So let's start, Michael, if you could just give us sort of take a few minutes to give us an overview about your business philosophy, really, and how that gets translated into practice. Oh, Michael, you have to turn on your mic.
There you go. There, unmuted. There you go. It's better. It's more effective that way, isn't it? So anyway, thank you very much for having me, Don. It's wonderful to see you. And you and I go back a long, long way, as a long time as friends. And so it's wonderful to be together to talk about such an important subject. So I was asked today to spend some time addressing some individuals who expect to be questioning and challenging and leading in business for the next generation. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to take the next hour and discuss any topic that you want. And as you suggested, maybe I could just give you a couple of minutes on introducing those on the session today to Maple Leaf Foods and the company that I've led now for over 25 years. We are one of Canada's largest food companies. We have a little bit more than the top line that Byron has referred to. We've grown a bit since then. We're now $4.5 billion in revenue. We have 13,000 people on our illustrious team, and we're mostly focused on the protein industry, both animal and meat protein and plant-based proteins. I'll begin with, largely because it connects to the topic for today, is a little bit about our belief system, which largely goes back a generation, really. But our belief our belief system is rooted in the idea of shared value. Some might describe it as a version of capitalism 2.0, but actually it reflects some values that originated in my family and their relationship with commerce. It's the idea that our role is to create an enduring benefit for all the stakeholders in the enterprise. It specifically rejects the primacy of shareholder value over shared value, and therefore requires a balancing of all those interests, focusing on and solutions and not or solutions. Finding a path forward in our industry in shared value is a pretty complex determination. It's sort of the intersection between, as we examined this carefully over the last decade, an intersection between what we love, what we're good at, what the world needs, and what we can get paid for. And it's kind of finding that intersection between those four ideas is kind of fundamental to the path forward that we've identified for our company. It's translated into a very purposeful journey for all of our team. We describe it as raising the good in food, but largely the vision statement says it all. We are in pursuit of becoming the most sustainable protein company on earth. A rather bold vision, I think, for the team, but it is it's very meaningful for us. We don't define sustainability just as kind of the environmental with an environmental dimension. We describe it and define it holistically in terms of a better food and the attributes of the food itself, better care, which specifically addresses the needs of the animals that are in our stewardship, better planet, of course, as we became the first large-scale food company in the world to be carbon neutral now, and better communities, and finding ways to engage with the communities and give back to the communities that we operate in a meaningful way. It is also about financial sustainability. This does not reject financial interests of the shareholders. It's an and, not an or, and that financial sustainability is equally important to us. At the end of the day, this view of shared value is baked into virtually everything we do. It's not a corner of the desk ESG effort. It's baked fundamentally into virtually every element of our culture, our strategies, our execution on a day in, day out basis. So it's very meaningful to us, and in fact has become the source of significant competitive advantage for us in the marketplace. So that gives you a bit of the foundation, and maybe with that we can turn it over to anything you'd like to talk about.
All right, well, that's a lot to unpack. So let's go through it. For starters, shared value, like how do you define that? And if it's not only shareholders, what are the different stakeholder groups? And how do you view that this perspective changes the way that you view them and the way that you behave towards them?
We've actually, taken a shot in both narrative terms and applying some metrics to it to take each one of the stakeholders that we believe we're here to create enduring value for, and in narrative terms and in very specific value creation terms.
Well, Michael, you just turned off your mic.
There you go. Didn't know that. Okay, sorry. So it starts with our consumers and our customers, and the value that we can create for them. That's there's a certain element of sustainability that's attached with ensuring your customers are satisfied with what you're doing. We find difference in the marketplace through our sustainability and shared value commitments because we're not the largest player in the North American marketplace, so we can be small enough to be rebellious but large enough to commercialize those ideas. So it's customers, it's consumers, it's our people, it's the animals in our care, it's the environment, communities that we operate in, and our shareholders. And so in each one of those cases, we've defined what it means to create enduring value for each one of them.
So, Michael, let's just talk about the business case for doing this. I know that you're driven by a very strong sense of values and doing the right thing. And we'll get into that in a second, but what's the case? And maybe you could start with, how's the company doing? I mean, we've been through this pandemic. Part of your revenue comes from the food services industry, supplying restaurants. Have you been hurt, and how's it going?
Well, that's so last year, 2020, we had an excellent year. I think on balance, it was one of our better ones, not because of the pandemic, but in spite of the pandemic.
Yeah.
We had lots of pluses and minuses. As you said, in our retail business actually was quite strong as people migrated from eating away from home to at home. Our food service business was exactly the opposite. They roughly came out about the same. So it was roughly neutral between the two of them.
Yeah.
But interestingly, our commitment to sustainability became a bit of a competitive edge through this. I think our consumer and customer interests in sustainability became of interest in the middle of this. I think there was a heightened sense of awareness to global risks that, whether it's a pandemic in one hand or climate change on another. So that I think we demonstrated through a very chaotic period of time that both our team were resilient in the sense that they demonstrated, all the things you'd want them to demonstrate or you'd wish or dream that they would in a situation like this. They were agile, they were fast, they were very focused and disciplined in their execution. They were kind of calm under fire, if you will, but stayed the course strategically on everything that they did. And through the pandemic, we executed against our priorities in with very clear discipline. First priority was keeping our people safe. Our second one was maintaining the integrity of our supply chain so that we could continue to feed consumers around the world. And then live our practice of shared value by supporting other stakeholders that maybe weren't as fortunate as us through this. And we did that in a number of different ways, whether it's our food security and insecurity initiatives, support of some of the producers that maybe didn't fare so well through this, as well as obviously our people and some of their more trying and difficult circumstances. So I think it was a very chaotic year, but we demonstrated the resilience of our strategies and our people, and it was a pretty good outcome, actually.
So when you're talking to a shareholder, you have this view that you reject the primacy of shareholder value. What's the case that creating value for these different stakeholders results in shareholder value? You've heard this thing over and over, that we do well by doing good, which in the past I don't think was true. I mean, lots of companies did well by being really bad, by being monopolies or having terrible labor practices or by externalizing their costs onto society. But clearly with transparency and the wind's changing right now, companies are many companies are starting on the road that you've been on for quite some time, thinking that the way to create shareholder value is to create value for everybody. But what's the case there for that?
Well, first of all, I think that, by and large, as shareholders, of which, I and my family are the largest shareholder of our enterprise, so that's a little helpful. But I think all of the shareholders that I directly communicate, not all, but certainly the majority, understand the distinction I'm about to make, which is they don't necessarily need to ensure that your profitability has been optimized to every penny. They just need to know that it's satisfactory, right? And our job as leaders in the organization is to find solutions, find a path to them to demonstrate a very satisfactory, in fact, more than satisfactory financial performance, even if it isn't always optimized in their interest. And the trick there, and that's a very delicate balance. The trick there is for us as managers, leaders, is finding ways to monetize the commitments that we're making. So, for example, we did make the very difficult decision to become the first carbon neutral food company in the world of our size. And it's a very material investment from our perspective, and puts us at on the surface at some competitive disadvantages. But for us, our unabashed, unashamed, is that the right word? The approach to this is trying to find customers and consumers that will buy more of our products because we're carbon neutral. We are the largest producer of animals raised without antibiotics in North America, and we try and find customers that will pay us for, in a margin accretive way, for meat raised without antibiotics, or gestation crate free in animal welfare statistics, or our commitment to food insecurity. And we get tremendous affinity for that, and that's lucrative for our shareholders. It's now, for example, Don, we said at our last quarterly call, we went from a standstill start in 2015. In the last 5 years, we've developed, between plant-based protein and sustainable meat, in this aura, is now 20% of our total portfolio, 20%. And the 3-year CAGR on that 20% of our business today has been over 25%. So, it's translated into profitable growth for the shareholders, and we're doing the right thing. So, that's not always obvious what that, how you can transition into what the world needs and what you can be paid for. It isn't always obvious, what that is. It just requires a little harder work, to figure it out.
How do you become a carbon neutral company? I mean, how does that work?
Well, we follow the very widely accepted scientific blueprint of avoid, reduce, recycle, and offset. And they're virtually all scientific bodies would kind of approach it on that basis. We made a commitment about 7 years ago, 5 to 7 years ago, to reduce our emissions by 25% by 2025. We're on track for that. We re-upped on those commitments by being one of 290 companies around the world, the second company in Canada, first food company, second of all companies in Canada to sign up for science-based targets to reduce a further 30% by 2030. Which is a very significant reduction in our footprint, obviously, which fulfills the kind of the first part of that avoid, reduce, recycle, and offset algorithm. We'll always have a tag end of emissions, but we have pursued a very responsible portfolio of offsetting initiatives that are kind of new vintage. Local, connected with our industry, and so on and so forth, and particularly just more recently, in the last month, announced a major commitment around offsets generated by regenerative agriculture, which is I'm super excited about, because that's a version of offsets that isn't just harm reduction; it's actual sequestration, right? And so. So it's a combination of all of those initiatives that get us to a net zero position today, which is something that we've role modeled in our industry, and we're kind of hopeful that others will follow suit.
Michael, could you talk to us about trade-offs? Like, being carbon neutral isn't free, right? And there are choices that you have to make.
Well, we made the decision because our carbon footprint is a very significant long-term risk for us. So when the board sat around and we spent a year and a half, 2 years studying the implications of this with virtually every angle, the decision was: do we want to own a company that is exposed to this carbon footprint, both as a company and in our industry, which is a key protagonist in the carbon question, right? The meat industry, food industry is a key protagonist. Do we want to own this kind of a business over the next 20 or 30 years with that kind of exposure, or do we want to make a little bit less? And be able to endure that storm with a carbon net zero position. And we felt that that was a more responsible long-term position. Then, here's where the and comes in, and then we have to figure out how do we monetize it. Like we didn't raise our prices as a result of this. We made no price adjustments, but we've taken the net zero logo and we're putting it on our products, and we're hopeful that people will, as a result of this, will buy more of our products as a result of our carbon position, and bundled with all of the other dimensions of sustainability. And so, the reality is, in a commitment like this, you can't monetize everything. You don't need to monetize everything. You need to monetize enough to make it satisfactory to shareholders and find enough consumers that are willing to support that, to be able to justify the path that you're on for shareholders, that it's good for them, and not or, and it's optimizing the circumstance we find ourselves in as an industry. So, it's a balancing act. But we have found that and there's so many other exemplars in other industries that this position has indeed given us competitive advantage, right, in the marketplace. It's distinctive. For example, we are growing at significant double digits in the United States today. The idea of a conventional food company going from Canada to the United States and walking in and saying, hi, I've got some food for you to buy, is a non-starter. You have no competitive advantage. Walking into the US marketplace with this distinctive advantage, which is for a whole host of reasons, is very difficult for these large-scale US companies to replicate strategically. For us to do that gives us the calling card when we call it. We're only 3% of the north of the US marketplace. We don't need to convince everybody. We just need to convince a few, and that few is generating, in excess of 20% growth today, and profitable growth, because it's differentiated growth and value-added growth in that marketplace. So that's part of the and solutions is figuring out ways to monetize, these commitments. That's actually, the ethos of shared value is how do you convert solving problems of the world into a good business proposition. So it's I think central to the proposition.
Well, of course, the notion of shared value came primarily from our colleague Michael Porter at Harvard, and who wrote the book literally on competitive advantage too. And he talked about competitive advantage being about differentiation, yes, about somehow being different. So I'm looking at your website and I see these ideas combined, that you tell investors that our vision is to be the most sustainable protein company on earth, which you said. And we believe with conviction that our growth strategies and leadership in sustainability will strategically differentiate the organization and create significant commercial value. So I wonder if you could just, you've explained this well, but just dig a little more about the difference between that view and the old corporate social responsibility, ESG view that often seemed to be an add-on.
Yeah, so, and I don't mean to be cynical about this, and I'm not cynical about it, because any kind of an ESG perspective or lens is a healthy one. I just kind of have the view, Don, that it may be a bit inadequate. And from my perspective, it's inadequate because the classic view of ESG is managed, on the corner of somebody's desk.
Yeah.
And it's typically about reputation and risk management for the enterprise.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about something that is, soul driving, commercial future solving. Shared value is about problem solving, right? It's fully integrated into the business. It isn't about risk management. It's not about reputation management. It's about problem solving, finding, problems that need to be solved in the world and making that central to your, to your enterprise. So it becomes baked right into the fabric of your strategies in a way that delivers enduring value to all of those stakeholders in some balanced version. So, I see that as a pretty material distinction. Most of the authors like Michael Porter or Mark Kramer would kind of offer up those kinds of distinctions, and I think they're very real.
Now, integrated into the fabric. So you're talking about the DNA here, the business processes, the way you go about strategy, the way you think, and even the corporate culture. And this is not a controversial statement that I'm about to make, that the CEO sets the corporate culture really by their own behavior or not. And as a CEO, I mean, could you just share some of your insights about how to make something like that happen, and how to get everyone thinking very differently about what is the purpose of this organization, so that whenever they're making a decision, they're always wondering, well, what's the right thing to do here that's consistent with our values and our goal?
Well, that's a great question. There's no easy answer in terms of what's what's required to alter the culture of the enterprise. I think I have an easier task of it than most, because we are owner operators,
right,
with a very long-term perspective. So there's very few people that in the Maple Leaf organization that, if we're heading in a certain path and we communicate it well, because there's very few people that could say, well, shit, if we could just duck, maybe we could dodge this bullet, and it'll pass. This too will pass. People don't feel that way in our organization, because we are owner-operator led and have a very long-term horizon. Our model of cultural shift, it really follows a very simple pathway of define, teach, and act. As you point out, it's our actions will be the determinant of the culture of the enterprise, whether that's around shared value or any other behavioral component. But we work very hard to define exactly what our expectations of culture and values and behavior are meant to be. And we're very explicit about it, about what it is and what it isn't. We teach it like hell, so that's about communicating it in multiple different platforms, but we teach the hell out of it to give people an opportunity to participate in our culture and our strategies and our direction setting. And then we, ultimately we work as hard as we can. It's not a practice of perfection. We're not perfect by any stretch. But we work hard to constantly refine our behaviors and our actions and our strategies to ensure that they reflect what we've defined, what we said we're going to do, what we've taught people, and aligned around that direction, that our actions reflect that in reality. So that there's very limited, if any, white space between what they see and what they heard. And ultimately that formula takes time. I think it probably takes a little bit less time with an owner-operator-led organization like ours, where people can't duck. They can't and won't duck.
So one of the things to bake that sense of values into is your systems and supply chain too. So could you talk to us a bit about that? I mean, how is the supply chain affected by this? How do you monitor your supply chain? For example, with the goal of having ethical treatment of animals.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have, our benchmarks there are, having world-class animal welfare standards. We've got an advisory board of some of the best and brightest in the world including Dr. Temple Grandin on our advisory committee to ensure that our standards of care reflect the very best science and best practices worldwide. We have a number of very specific initiatives, whether it's density levels or lighting or things of that nature around the care themselves. We were one of the leaders in the world around gestation crate-free in hog production, all the way through to last year. We invested $250,000 actually in just basically toys for animals, largely because they're very social animals, and it's part of their existence is some measure of enrichment. And so all the way from that all the way through to everything from the process of euthanasia to transportation. So there's a range of initiatives that we have, but we follow a very disciplined practice of being world leaders in animal welfare and humane practices around that. So does that answer your question, Bill?
Yeah, I think so. And you've made some big changes to your supply chain recently, haven't you?
Yeah, we have. Part of maintaining financial stability and sustainability is investing in our assets. In order for us to be waste eliminators, we have to have the very best assets that we can. And we've invested in our supply chains, in excess of, by the end of next year, over a decade, about $2.3 billion in our assets. So it's a very significant commitment to the latest technologies in productivity, waste reduction, and so on and so forth. The connectivity to our sustainability initiatives. Certainly animal welfare is one of them, but we set very aggressive goals by individual operation in terms of their emissions reduction. And because of it's almost like this simulated internal carbon market, because we have a certain footprint of emissions today, we are neutralizing those at a cost. As we reduce our emissions, we reduce the cost of neutralizing it. So the return attached to that is actually factored into each and every capital investment that we make, so that it amplifies the return on investment, if you will, because it's an internal return on investment, but it reduces our cost. So it encourages us to invest more capital on the reduces. So it's I think strategists would describe that as a virtuous cycle, and it's been proven to be very effective. We also, because we are, our people and our culture is committed to the community activities that we've committed to. We are leaders in the country in the terrible challenges of food insecurity, and our people have become very engaged in that coast to coast, whether it's actively involved in our Six Sigma team has done multiple engagements with various food banks across the country, helping them become more efficient and effective in their mandates, all the way through to our people working with some of the food security partners that we have across the country and working in their individual missions. So it's been very much a part of our people strategy at the same time as it's part of our operational and supply chain strategy. So it goes on and on in terms of how it's baked into the day-to-day lives of our people and our strategies.
Yeah. I'm going to start to draw on some of the good questions that are coming in, but there's lots more to talk about here. So there are a couple of questions having to do with people. Mm-hmm. And, what does it mean to create value for employees of Maple Leaf other than in the traditional ways? You give people a job, you try and keep them safe, you give them some benefits. How do you think differently about your people?
Well, first of all, not to be underestimated, having a secure source of income with competitive pay structures is a pretty good foundation in that enduring value. But we try and focus on creating additional value through things like creating opportunities for our people. We invest very significantly in creating the opportunities for personal growth, both in leadership and non-leadership positions. Number two is the idea of creating meaning in people's life in their role beyond just the fact that I come to work and get paid for it. It's the biggest chunk of your workday. So, or your personal life is your workday, and so bringing meaning to that through our sustainability journey is, I think, we found to be very important, enduring value for individuals. We've tried to support them in ways like, for example, one of our goals, which we're making progress towards. We have not achieved it yet, but we're making progress towards this. Is that we aspire to the fact that to the opportunity that every single Maple Leaf employee will be engaged in some way in volunteerism, and our goal is to facilitate that. So again, part of facilitated meaning to their work, and finally. Part of this commitment is shows up in our willingness to go the extra mile to protect people's health and safety in our organization. We are a manufacturing company, and that comes with some risk. I would tell you, and we're super proud of this, that we have world-leading health and safety outcomes in our company, world-leading, and of all industries, not just food production. Some of our relative peer companies south of the border would have safety records that would be 10 times worse than ours. We have incident rates that are phenomenally low because of that commitment to health and safety across the organization. So again, it shows up in the ways you described, but we try and enrich it in other ways.
The one stakeholder group we've touched on, but maybe you could elaborate a bit more, is about the communities within which you operate. And it's really about society. And this is about sustainability for the planet, but I think there's some other initiatives in there that might be worth looking at. Like, for example, you personally, and Maple Leaf cares a lot about food security and having a sustainable food system. And I know, actually, I know this from Anna, who's involved with the Canadian Food Centers, that you're a big supporter of that initiative. Could you tell us a bit about that? There's nutrition, there's, the environment, all kinds of issues here where, a company can make a real difference.
Well, it's a hugely passionate topic for all of us at Maple Leaf. We were searching for meaningful ways to add value to our communities and support our communities and give back to the communities that we operate in across the country. And we spent years considering, ways that we could accomplish that. We ended up landing in this challenge of food security, recognizing that this was one of the more embarrassing outcomes to a country that might be considered one of the breadbaskets to the world. That 4 million Canadians, 4 million, are food insecure.
Yeah.
1 in 8 families, 1 in 6 children, 1 in 2 in the North, children in the North are food insecure, and it's shocking.
Unbelievable.
There's a United Nations sponsored definition of food security. It's not just about calories; it's about nutritional appropriateness and religiously or ethnically appropriate food. But there's a widely held definition of that, and because we are in the food industry, we felt, and we had specific expertise in consumerism around food consumption, food supply chains, and the like. We felt that this was a problem that, while we couldn't solve it on our own, we could play a leadership position in coordinating solutions through industry, civil society, and government. We established a goal of about 3 years ago. We established a goal of a 50% reduction in food insecurity by 2030, collaboratively with all of those constituencies. We funded it with over $10 million from Maple Leaf, plus we're fundraising from others. So we've raised another 5 from others. We're playing a very strong knowledge and innovation role for all of the agencies that are dealing in food security across the country. We have now, I think, 17 or 18 partner agencies across the country. And we're playing a very strong convener role in bringing all of those stakeholders together and finding solutions. We're very innovation driven in the sense that we're innovation driven towards a meaningful goal, which I think makes us very focused on not just checking but looking for solutions to this challenge. We've got a very deep understanding today of what the diagnosis, the theory of change, if you will, that is required. We're always going to spend the next few years validating that through research and various project initiatives. And then the final leg in the journey is scaling it up and scaling up the theory of change. So we're committed to it. It's a big part of big part of our our sustainability commitment. We're very inspired by it, actually.
So this links to one of the questions that was asked. How do you see the food industry changing as a result of this pandemic, if at all?
I don't see. I think the food industry in North America has demonstrated more resilience than a lot of people expected of it, actually. So I don't see a significant change. There'll be some normalization as the food service industry tends to recover, and it likely will. It'll take some time, but it will recover. Retail channel will tend to slow down, just offsetting that. But that was net neutral in the first instance. It'll be net neutral as it normalizes. I think there's probably 2 sustaining changes that we're focused on. Number one is the rise of e-commerce. Right? The role of digital commerce was there before, but certainly accelerated materially after. And I think that how that plays out and how we optimize our brand strategies and our position on a digital shelf rather than a physical shelf is certainly one of the enduring outcomes. And very clearly the one that everybody's trying to figure out, which is what does work 2.0 look like? Recognizing that going from a physical work environment to 100% virtual work environment was instantaneous, seamless, to the surprise of so many people of how seamless it actually was.
Yeah.
I think migrating from 100% virtual to a hybrid is going to be significantly more difficult. When you double click on the execution of the hybrid model, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a myriad of choices and decision rights and norms and belief systems around how much physical presence is required versus virtual presence, and for what activities and what types of roles, and who has decision rights. It's really, really complicated. So,
yeah.
we along with everybody else trying to figure out exactly what that looks like in Work 2.0. But other than that, I think we'll move beyond this and move forward.
For those in the audience, Michael's referring to the food services industry and restaurants. If you don't remember, that's a place where you go and there's a list of things that you can order and someone brings you the food and you don't have to do the dishes. They're really, really great. And hopefully they'll be back soon. Michael, we got a bit more time here. I wonder if you could just tell us about resistance that you might have faced with this view. Shareholder value is, and to reject that is sort of a bit of a heretical point of view. Now, you said that within the company, you've been able to convince investors that rejecting shareholder primacy will have long-term benefit to the firm and to them. But overall, CEOs have been nervous about publicly stating any kind of unease about shareholder primacy. Have you run into that at all within your shareholder group? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But first of all, we're very clear, Don, that we approach this as an and, not an or. We're not rejecting shareholder value. We're rejecting the primacy of shareholder value. That the shareholders are going to be, nourished to the expense of other stakeholders.
Right.
We see it as an and solution, not an or solution. And I know that sounds a bit Pollyannish, but that makes our task a little more challenging because we have to find the sweet spot of those and solutions. What we've done, I pay very careful attention to shareholder value because our goal is to take these, whether you call them radical concepts or not, to take this posture and transition it into something that's also lucrative for the shareholders. And we've done that. We've done that by monetizing our what makes us distinctive in the marketplace, whether it's growth in the US or monetizing our position on raising animals without antibiotic, which a significant portion of the population wants, and we've got a competitive advantage in it, whether it's monetizing our position in carbon neutrality, whether it's advancing our talent strategies because of who we are as an organization and attracting better talent, and so on and so forth. We've been able to demonstrate to our shareholders through long-term commitments, and we've made very long-term commitments of a lucrative future for them. They don't, as long as they can demonstrate that it's a satisfactory and lucrative future for them, they don't typically come back and say, well, prove to us that it couldn't have been better had you not done this, right? They're satisfied with the answer that we're demonstrating for them. For example, in 2015, we hit an EBITDA margin target of 10%. We set a 2022 target of raising it from 10 to 14 to 16, right? We're on track to that. We're about, now about 150 basis points away from that, and we're very confident, almost assured that we'll meet that 2022 long-term target of a 14 to 16% EBITDA margin. We've done that on the back of the fact that our sustainable meat and our plant-based protein business today is 20% of our portfolio and is growing like stink. It's 25% CAGR in the last 3 years, and it's margin accretive in the sustainable meat platform. So we've found the sweet spot between growth and margin accretion, right? Because we've been able to monetize those things. So, I think that's the essence of shared value, is finding ways to make this, to not hope that it's lucrative long term and make that an aspirational target, but to have a very specific plan as to how you intend to make this, right for your sustainability initiatives and your commitments to all stakeholders and the shareholders, without embracing some vision of optimization or shareholder primacy.
I'm going to bundle 3 questions that have come in together here. If you can remember them or make a note, and maybe we can answer them more quickly. First of all, how do you reconcile the fact that your company obviously strives to increase the consumption of its products, but these are environmental problematic products, and the planet would benefit from a significant reduction in the consumption of such products, at least in relation to the standard American diet? Do you think it's realistic for this kind of business to be truly sustainable? That's number 1. Number 2, hats off creating the world's first carbon neutral protein company. Every day another company announces an aspiration to achieve this, and you're in the vanguard. One of the rules of thumbs you mentioned is to offset. You mentioned local industry related products. Are you referring to biogas And could you give an example? Lastly, is Maple Leaf involved with Mark Carney's task force to scale voluntary carbon markets? And a final one has to do with, and you've mentioned this, Michael, a couple of times about being an owner operator, and that's kind of convenient to say the least. But how about for companies and CEOs who are not in that position? Do you think corporate CEOs should be speaking about broader societal and even political issues? And can those who are not owner operators do this without a risk of falling afoul of their customers and board?
There's a lot there to unpack. I'll try and be brief. There's a lot there to unpack.
You got a minute on each of them.
The idea, let me start with the existential question is, does our industry have a right to exist?
Yeah.
Right? And I know that there's a lot of controversy around that. That maybe the answer is we don't. Right. I believe that the human body has been engineered to eat animal proteins along with most other mammals for the last 150,000 years. So I don't necessarily think that that's going to change materially over the course of the next 20 or 30 years. It's the transportation industry is a major contributor to our emissions challenges and climate problems in the world. The answer isn't asking people to walk to work, right? The answer is fixing that industry so that its footprint isn't as deleterious in the first instance. It's fixing the industry, not replacing the industry. And our commitment has been to find a path forward to fixing this industry that's been around for 150,000 years and likely in perpetuity will continue to be here, fixing it in a way that can find that path to carbon neutrality so we are not the source of the problem that has previously been ascribed to us. Number one. Number two is the pivot is migrating this industry from a source of the problem to being one of the sources of the solution. And that's a huge pivot point. There are technologies on the horizon that will actually accomplish that goal. The two that are most prominent are, number one, regenerative agriculture that has the prospects of actually sequestering carbon back into the soil where it belongs, right? From the atmosphere into the soil where it belongs. And that can be accomplished through agricultural practice. Number two is around anaerobic digestion. The biggest challenge in our industry happens to be manure. It's methane emissions, right? That's the biggest challenge. Anaerobic digestion is a technology that can convert that to a renewable energy source. And to the extent that we can commercialize those two technologies, we can not only have the prospect of neutralizing our footprint, but also, we could also dream of even going to a place of carbon negative, which is an even more exciting prospect. That's the first. That was the thoughts around our existence. So I lost my train of thought. What was your second one, Don?
Well, it had to do with carbon offsets.
Yeah.
And are you referring to biogas? Could you give an example?
Well,
And
Mark Carney's one of them. Yeah. So on the offsets, I would personally prefer to focus all of our offset portfolio around sequestration practices like regen agriculture. In virtually every scientific body that we've talked to have begged us to have a balanced portfolio that includes some measure of harm reduction components in it, but as long as they're verified, new generation, agriculturally oriented or connected and local, that we have a more balanced portfolio that includes harm reduction in addition to sequestration. Biogas, which is a component of anaerobic digestion, is one of those significant technologies. There's a lot to do to commercialize that and scale it up, but it's absolutely in the art of the possible. Finally, on the Mark Carney component, no, we haven't. I know Mark, but we haven't been directly involved in that initiative. But maybe we should.
The final one was about being an owner operator. How about if you're not?
Yeah, well, that's a thornier question. Having said that, I think that there's lots of examples, Don, where CEOs have been very clear in taking societal positions. I know I'm on the board at Royal Bank. Dave McKay is a rock star in that regard. You look south of the border, Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, is one of the first advocates of gun control, right, in America, if you can imagine that. So there's lots of examples in corporate America where CEOs have been very outspoken on a variety of kind of social matters, and I really admire that.
I hate to jump in and end the talk, but we committed to a schedule with Michael, and we will not abuse that privilege. So thank you, Michael, for joining with us today and for sharing so many of your ideals and practices that are changing our road for the better. Maple Leaf Foods is clearly leading the way and an example for Canadian and international companies. And I apologize for understating Maple Leaf Foods revenues by over $1 billion. As you have stressed, shareholder interests are still important. So on behalf of everyone at Trent, my sincere thanks to Don Tapscott and Anna Lopez for creating this lecture, and to Don and Michael for their engaging discussion today. The Q&A and chat panels were buzzing throughout. And thanks to all of you for logging in today. Stay safe and enjoy your evening.
Thank you,
Michael.